Have you ever had a day where you feel like technology is just determined to trip you up? I feel like I have lived 50 plus years of those days. Technology is exciting and it always seems to be top of mind for everybody as we move forward and each new advance comes out. And for whatever reason, as I've been around things, it's like I have a little aura that causes it to glitch or have grief or difficulty. Or at least that's been my perception. Now, that said, once technology is out for a little bit, even though I wanted to be an early adopter, I kind of become a mid-level adopter. And once it's out for a little bit, I get it and I figure out how to leverage it. I figure out how to use it to be able to help others. And I would say that it's been a similar journey with me learning how to use AI. The first time that I tried using AI, it spit out advice that I swear it sounded more like a generic customer service bot than anything I would ever say. And I was just looking for it to rephrase something for me or give me a basic outline. And over, in the past several years, as AI has become more popular, I would see videos of someone cheering about AI or giving the next great hack or you have to use this. And I would come back hopeful, but always seem to leave each of those times thinking, man, if this is the future, thanks. But no, I am going to stay with something real. I am going to stay with something that feels authentic. Now, I teach and I attempt to model authenticity, and AI for me, until very recently, really hasn't been it. And before you think I'm about to tell you that you must use a certain AI tool or this newfangled thing is the right thing, that's not this conversation. I'm Dan McPherson. I'm a founder, a CEO, and a host of Calm and Clarity Conversations. And we're talking today about AI. And specifically, I'm coming to you with an honest version of my AI journey because I think in the world today, one of the things that is creating a lack of calm is AI and this discussion around it. And how to use it has been incredibly unclear. So it feels like maybe even tipped off a little bit by episode one of this very podcast that had my amazing friend Leanne Lila Kaba on it. And she started talking about AI. It seems like it is driving so much conversation that it bears getting into a bit more. And I want to share with you how over the last few months, I have been going from this one spot where I felt intimidated and nervous and was rolling my eyes at the idea to now a spot where I understand how this crazy technology can help even more people. And it can help me help more people. And maybe most importantly in all of this, that I can do it as I've now learned without losing my soul or my voice or giving up what makes my work distinctly mine. Many of you who listen to this are creatives or you're entrepreneurs, and maybe you've had different skepticism and feelings like I did. And I think you're going to want to take a moment and listen to how I've walked through it and what I learned, because I'm really coming through to the other side in some beautiful and unexpected, at least for me, ways. So if you care about staying true to your voice and you want to do this in a world that is focused on shortcuts and the next big prompting hack, then that's not this conversation. But if you want to laugh a little bit at my ridiculousness, then this is probably going to be a pretty good episode for you. Now, when I was beginning to hear about AI, and I will say it was 5 years ago, maybe it was seven, maybe it was 10, I don't know. I was skeptical. I was excited, right? Because it was the new thing and it had the promise of being able to do a lot for us, but I didn't feel great. The reason I was excited is I think it took me back to my childhood. I was when I was much younger, and I guess I still do. I was an avid reader, and I would read a lot of fiction. I even at one point wrote almost all of a fiction book. I kind of wish I could find that, not so I could publish it, mind you, but so I could laugh at what I wrote when I was like 12 years old, and look in that space and see, okay, that's what I thought good writing was. Having now an English degree and having trained communication for a long time, I'm sure it would be painful but hilarious. But I was thinking about AI when I was a kid, right? I didn't know what to call it. Some people called it artificial intelligence, but I looked and I thought all these cool things that we see in Star Trek, and many of which have now come true in the phones that we hold in our hands. But that was my first introduction, and I always thought, oh, that sounds cool, but a little scary, right? There's always those warnings of it's cool and it's scary, and I think both are pretty fair. You can do some really fun stuff that makes your life a lot better, but also it can be terrifying as to where it can, and frankly, if we're truly honest, is likely to go. And that got me into when I started hearing about it a few years ago, excited. So I would check in. And I have several friends. I'm very fortunate to know quite a few people that are experts in the AI space. Shout out to Leanne again, and also to Garrick and Julian and several others in my world who this is their world. They have spent so much time digging in there. I know some others who have used it heavily for business that work for some of the big consulting companies. And I enjoyed hearing about it, but more from a distance. I don't know, I guess it just felt like there was a barrier to me. One of the things that I share pretty frequently is that in life, easy and hard is largely irrelevant. We can all do hard things, but light and heavy matter immensely. That if something feels heavy, that even if it is the right thing for us, even if it could move us the furthest, the fastest, it can crush us in other areas. It can slow us down. It could be the right thing for most people, but not the right thing for us. And that's how AI has felt to me for a very long time. I wanted to understand it, but everything I heard was on either on the scary side, or it was on the tech bro side, or it was if you get this hack, you can get there. It was the shortcuts. And don't get me wrong, I like a good shortcut as much as the next person. However, it didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like my vibe. It didn't feel like it would allow me to speak to my audience. And it felt like it would be harder to learn than it would have any benefit for. And so for me, my gut level reaction was that there was something that just felt off. And so I stayed away. I heard about ChatGPT and Perplexity and Anthropic and Grok and all these different things. That's the other thing. Let's be clear. 10 new tools, it seems like, come out every day. And if you get caught up into the hustle and bustle of hearing about it on TikTok or everywhere else, and you go down the AI path, you're hearing about new things all the time. It's just an overwhelming information flow. It can just shut your brain down. And so I realized, I was like, I don't want to learn 100 different things. So that was what held me back for a very long time. It felt complicated. It felt heavy. It felt like everything was changing. So why would I learn anything now? Because it would just be changed by tomorrow. And candidly, I also was concerned and am about the scary future of AI, where AI goes. And I think the last big portion was that I felt like, based on everything that I had seen, or at least that I was aware that I'd seen, that you couldn't keep authenticity while having AI right with and for you. And authenticity is the core of everything I stand for. My number one core value is people matter most and relationships are everything. I work with creatives and heart-centered entrepreneurs all around the world, and they share these concerns. So let's address a couple of those, and then I'll share with you kind of how things changed for me over the last few months. But I think it's important to look at that scary future. And I've got to say something that I'm uncomfortable with, but I think it's real. And that is this. I think the scary future of AI is going to happen. I don't know how scary it'll be. I don't know how utterly crushing societally that it'll eventually be, but I know that it's more advanced behind the curtain than we've already seen. I know that there are levels that are being developed and true artificial intelligence is there, and that there are parts of that that are immensely exciting, being able to stop diseases through powerful research, being able to move things forward. But there are also scary parts of what happens when AI says no. We've recently seen stories of AI promoting potentially criminal activities, and the guardrails and guidelines that are in place. it's important to realize that there are some dark places that this is going to go. And initially, there's a tool, so it's a matter of how you use it. But what happens when it gets to be more than a tool? And to reconcile this, and I can't fully reconcile it for you, I can't fully reconcile it for me for that matter, but to reconcile this, what I have had to, I guess, get to a point of is understanding that my one dot of information that I provide out of the billions of people that are feeding into it, working on it, is not going to slow down the progress of AI. It's not going to change how AI works in any meaningful way. And this isn't about don't resist it, or we need to stand up against it. I think A, that die has already been cast, and B, I think this is a bit of a different conversation, although I'm glad to engage with any of you in it. But it's more that knowing that's not the case, what we do see isn't so much, and Leanne pointed this out in episode one really nicely, it isn't so much that individual people are necessarily being replaced by AI. I think there's some of that, but it's more that that what is happening is people are being replaced by people who know how to use AI, who know how to leverage that. And especially as you look at the next 4 or 5 years, if you look 15 years out, maybe it changes, but recognizing that our leverage and the ability to act as the strength and productivity of 3 or 5 or 10 people, or to deal with the things that are heaviest to us by using a tool, if we don't do that, we will be left behind, and not in some trite way, but in a very practical way of not being able to get the things done that we need to. And I think the cool part of this is we're at an early enough stage, even though it may not feel like it, because we hear about it every day and there's so much news around this, especially in the bubbles that are talking about it. But you can tell the integration is really there. It's even in all of your searches, it's in all of your phones, right? But we're still early enough that the first 10% of people or 5% of people to use it meaningfully are being engaged. So if you pick up even a few pieces, even a few structures that can move you forward, I suspect you're going to find yourself moving much further ahead, and probably in much more of an exponential manner than you will in the future. So that's a lot of how I came through some of my skepticism, not because it was all resolved, but because this important conversation needs to be had. And I believe that understanding the thing and being able to use the power of the tools for good matters. I'm a heart centered entrepreneur. I work with and train and coach heart centered entrepreneurs and heart centered humans. And if we can bring heart centered perspective into the AI space and use it in that way, then guess what? It learns from us too. So now for me, that's where I began. Where things changed, and this may surprise some of you listening, but it was only just a couple of months ago. This isn't Dan's been doing AI for a few years and I'm telling you that whole story. No, it really was a couple of months ago that things started shifting dramatically for me. And I learned how to use AI in a vastly different way than I could have imagined, but also in a different way from now that I've done some research, in a different way from anything that I'm seeing out there. And that is what allows it to really gel with me, and what drives me to come here and share this with you. About 2 months ago, I would say I'd gotten okay at prompting. Right. There's so many videos about this prompting hack and that prompting hack. I'd gotten pretty good at giving those basic directions to AI and asking questions. But I would also say I was mostly using it like most people do, just as a question chat bot. And my synthesis, though, my number one ability in the world is synthesis, to be able to see things from 100 places, grab a piece of each and make something better than any of them. It's my number one gift. My number two gift is to be able to turn that around and share it in an easy to understand way that allows you and other people to take steps forward. That hit a saturation point where it all started to come together. And my my moment where my frustration at not being able to use AI, but seeing it out there and just getting pounded with it over and over, and my curiosity of how do we make it work? And side note, I believe passionately that curiosity is the number one skill in the world. Learn how to ask more and better questions, whether it's of the people you're with or of your AI, as we'll talk about, that when those things came together, it had built up to a point where I couldn't not do it anymore. And this is a good distinctive for you in your lives. If you're looking for calm, you're looking for clarity. People ask me all the time, Dan, when should I write the book? Do it when you can't not do it. Dan, when should I go on this trip? Go when you can't not do it. That's a very good standard for you to keep for yourself of I do the thing when I can't not do it anymore. Now, for me, this led to a Tuesday. And why it was a Tuesday, no idea. But it led to a Tuesday, and let's call it blank page Tuesday. I despise writing from a blank page. I really I can do it, but it takes me forever. It feels to our point just a bit ago, it feels very heavy. And so I opened up AI and I put in a prompt and I said, "Hey, here's what I'm trying to talk about." And I don't even remember exactly what the post was. I think it was rewriting something for one of my clients, but I put in the post and it gave me something back that was generic and for something kind of snapped in me. I got frustrated. I got a little bit angry and I'm like, this is not how it needs to be. And so I started asking questions and I was using Chat GPT. I have the $20 a month, the plus version. And that's primarily what I use. I have access to several other tools, but 90% of what I do is there because I think as many as there are a lot of tools, and some of them are, on today, ChatGPT will be number one ranked in the world, and tomorrow they'll be number 12, and a month from now they'll be number one. I found I would rather get very, very good at one as opposed to chasing all the shiny objects all over, and that was healthier for my mind. For you, it might be understanding where each tool fits in and connecting them together. That's okay. The principles are going to be the same. So when I got angry, though, I started, and I was really angry with myself, right? Because I couldn't get past the blank page and I was relying on this machine to do it for me. And there was probably some ego involved. But I started asking questions. I said, why does it sound like this way? Can you write it with more heart? And then GPT gave me some feedback. And I said, yeah, I can. And it tweaked it. And I started seeing changes that reflected a change in voice. And so I asked more questions. And I started asking, well, how does this work? How do can you remember how I want things? And here are my core values. Here are some quotes. Here's what I stand for. And that was great. And I found that the results, and when I say I dove in over the next 3 to 4 days, I probably spent 30 hours diving in. And it all started with that one post, but it went on to other posts. It went on to evaluating my tech stack. It went to how can I help my team? Hey, here's a project that we're going to work on. And I want to be clear, it wasn't about me getting all of those things done. It was that those things came up as part of talking about and thinking about my brand. And they mostly came up as I was asking questions of how does this work? And I started asking things like, well, can we have a rating? Can you tell me how the quality of this writing compares to other writing out there? And we ended up establishing goals of getting to the top 0.1% of all writing. And you may be thinking, how could GPT know that? Well, I asked that question too. I asked it, how do you know? And it gave me a list of what it was comparing to and who it was comparing to and what type of writers it was considering, what type of writing it was, what level of publishing it could be. I went all the way in. And guys, to be clear, you do not need to go all the way in. And even when I'm now just beginning to train some of this for my clients, I'm not having them go all the way in. I'm trying to take what I've learned and share it with them, but I'm sharing my journey with you to tell you I went deep. I went all the way down the rabbit hole. Now, the thing is, as I did and I started publishing a little bit, what happened was I had clients and members of my team, they started saying, hey, I don't know which ones are written by AI versus you. That was really cool, right? That I'd found these guardrails and understandings that made it to where what I would put in would come out and be me. It would have my voice as a heart-centered human without AI traces, without being able to be picked out. And literally, those who knew me well couldn't tell which one was written by which. That that lit a little bit of a fire in me as to what the possibilities could be. And then even maybe a little bit more importantly, when I started to understand as I went into these questions that the prompts are the shiny object. And it's not that prompting doesn't matter and getting better at prompting doesn't help, but you actually don't need to be as formulaic as everyone would have you. That's like the, oh, I don't know. I suppose that's like the grade school version of here, let's just lower the bar and give you something that you can copy and paste to use. The real strength I found in using AI in this way was having conversations, and it was asking really good questions. And as I got that, I got calm. Now, as you'll hear in a moment, I did not stay calm because some things happened, but I got calm and I had clarity. I said, wait a minute, I can fashion a system. I can train this thing to think like me. It can be heart centered. I mean, it isn't heart centered, but it can reflect me as heart centered. It can understand my goals and actually help me toward them. It can put out copy and programs and even evaluate technology from the perspective in the way that I would. Holy mackerel. And I got very excited. Now, that's when I started talking about it to everyone. You know how it is when you first learn something and you start thinking now you know most of the things. I had a thankfully very brief moment because I got humbled pretty hard, but I had a very brief moment where I was like, I know all the things. And I would tell everybody as if they didn't, right? And it was just a couple of days. And then I took a breath and I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I have a lot more to learn. But it was cool because I was seeing things that I hadn't believed were possible, that I hadn't heard from anyone of being possible. And I was developing things as part of this that were different than what I had heard as well. So let's talk a little bit about that, about guardrails and growth, right? There are, you may know if you followed AI at all, that there are guardrails that are programmed into the systems naturally, right? That when the models are trained, there are things they can do, things they cannot do. Generally, they try to keep it positive, they try to keep it from doing illegal things, all of those. Well, I learned through all this questioning that there are tools that we can create and use that help to build our brands. So, some of the tools, just to give you a few examples, that I use to keep my voice at the center of everything that I do are language banks. So, my GPTs, as I've trained them, and I do not, for those who are listening who are a little technical, I am not using a custom GPT. I am custom training the GPT in a project. For those of you who that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. That's just a little bit of clarification. But I've created a language bank to where literally there are quote banks of quotes that I use that now will be integrated going forward into writing that I do, but also used as guidelines. I have real reviews and ratings against a standard. No matter what we do, there's a writing quality standard, and nothing can go out that isn't at the worst in the top 5% of what would be put out by peers that I respect in the categories that we're working in. Or there are ratings around how does something compare to a top 1% or 0.1% business in the same field and at different levels of development. Those are just a few examples. I've also built in guidelines and guardrails that are around integrity checks to make sure that everything that is there is true. Many of you have probably heard of how AI can hallucinate or how it can drift. And I've built some guardrails that check for that, that have a high degree of likelihood of preventing it. None of this is perfect, right? The AI is not perfect. I'm not perfect. The tools aren't perfect, but into the 90s of percent of accuracy. one of the most powerful things that I've created, and I actually want to thank our guest from episode two, Dan Zahner. I think it was months and months ago. He and I talked about this idea, and he had it, so I want to give him credit for it. It's evolved a lot from there, but of having a council of advisors that are people that I respect, and I've refined it and done gap analysis around it and created this carefully crafted council of advisors that now all the things that we create, whether it be a post or an analysis or whatever, I can say, what do the advisors think? And it revises it further, makes it better, and ensures that I am matching the tone and voice and strategy of people that I respect in the world. So those are a few examples of some of the really cool things that were being built in just those 4 to 5 days. Now, that said, I told you a few minutes ago that I got humbled, and oh boy, did I. So I was sitting here late at night. You know how it is. You've been doing a thing for a long time, you've been driving into it, you're really excited that it's going well. And I asked a question of AI or of the GPT, and I asked it a question about what we were working on. And it said, I don't, and it basically said, I don't know. And I'm like, well, review back to the conversation that we've had and show me what it is. And essentially it said, I can't. And this is the first time I came to begin ever so slightly, but ever so jarringly, to understand how AI or GPT's memory works. I started to understand about context windows and the fact that there are a certain amount of tokens, which are basically the number of letters or figures that you can put in, and how many it can remember and rescan every time it's asking you something. And that once it passes that, the things that were before that window are just gone, and they're gone forever. And I was crushed because I'd been working so hard for 4 days. And just for those who are a little bit more knowledgeable, the particular window that I'd been working in was about 100,000 token limit. And unknowingly, I had actually put in a guardrail to tell me when I was getting near the token limit. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know. I was pretty new to, especially to these deep dives. And that guardrail failed because there were things I didn't know from before of what could be automated and what couldn't. And so it hallucinated and told me it could do a task later and that it would come back to that, which is not how GPT works. So when I got this message, I said, hey, what's our token count? 560,000. It told me just as it broke and just as it ended and took my 4 days of work, and it was essentially gone. Now, the knowledge wasn't gone for me, but having built all those things that I just talked about, it was not there. And I was so upset. Oh my goodness. Even just thinking about it now, there's still some emotion around it, even though I try to have there not be. But when you get to that spot, you've got a choice, right? You can just quit, you can pause and breathe and then go forward, or you can bullheadedly charge forward. At first, I tried to bullheadedly charge forward, and I didn't ask enough questions. The more bullheaded we are, the more stubborn and frustrated we get, the less our neurons fire in the appropriate way. And I didn't ask enough questions. So what happened? Well, I was like, all right, great. I'll copy and paste it into a new chat, and I'll try and recover all the things because you could still see the stuff, but GPT couldn't read it. I copied and pasted it, only to find out that it didn't actually start a new chat and that I'd copied and pasted it pointlessly, and it couldn't really remember things in that way either. So I spent several more hours doing something that didn't help at all. Then I took a couple days away. I was upset. I was thinking, am I ever going to come back to this? I know I've got something here, but do I have the ability and the time? I've got a lot else going on in life to come back and fight through this. And a couple days later, I did come back, and I spent time resolving these conflicts about memory. I also during this time learned a little more about AI voice and how to eliminate things like M and N dashes or those things that all tell you whether something's written by AI. I also learned about hallucinations and how GPT can lie to you and how to prevent it from doing that or how to get it to stop drifting in its conversational style and understanding of you. It was a lot of work. But I learned it and I found these workarounds and I through this process, I worked really hard not to get caught by shiny objects because, of course, in my frustration, everybody was saying, "Oh, well, you'll use this tool and go use this tool and go use that one." And that didn't feel like the right answer. So I paused, I breathed, I worked on it, I got around it. And now, not only do I can, not only can I get copy that is really good, that I can look at it and think, I wrote that. One of the evaluations I have it do is what percent is written by it versus me. And then what percent does it would it appear to be written and what percent of traces of AI are there in it, et cetera. But it is very strongly content that I would write. It's often prettier because I suck at emojis. So it can do emojis and rich text and make that better for me. But the content, the reading of it, in most cases, you would look and go, yeah, Dan wrote all of that. And in many ways, I did because I spent dozens of hours training it. Now I understand how to help somebody else get there in a couple of hours rather than having to spend dozens because I get how it works now. I've also had it help me evaluate my technology stack, all the tech tools and which ones to add and when to add them and what time frame. I've had it help me craft funnels. I've had it help me build landing pages and update my social profiles and do these things with confidence. And just probably the cleanest example, because it's where I started, was with copy. I would say that before, let's say in the beginning, so a month or two ago, before those 4 days of deep dive, before my Tuesday of blank pages, when if I would have put in a prompt, I would have put in probably most likely a several hundred word prompt, maybe even if it needed to write the post or a lot of the post, and it would have been rated in the top 10% of the world of copywriting, right? Maybe 15%. And that was good. I've been trained as a writer. I'm able to get pretty good. You writing top 10%, you're doing really well. Now, after having gone through this, I can put in a prompt of 30-ish words and without any revisions, it'll be 95% me and in the top 2 to 3% of writing as rated against the top people in the field. And that takes about 2 to 3 minutes. I can revise it typically 1 or 2 times and ask it to give me a picture that matches my brand. That is a quote card, which is how I'm finding I get greater engagement is if I have a thematic quote card with the post and be done in 5 minutes and have it posted and have it be fully me, matching my brand, matching my goals, matching my heart, matching how I want to connect to the world, and let me spend the time engaging. And it takes my real idea. A good example from the last couple of weeks is there was a ridiculousness. I looked outside and it was 100 degrees. It was hailing and there was a guy mowing the lawn. If any of you are connected with me on Facebook or LinkedIn, feel free to go and look and you'll see that post. That post, I saw what I saw. I did write maybe a paragraph or so about this because it was so unique. I knew I needed to describe it. But that post connected and led to conversations and even a client. And it felt, and to this day feels like me. Why? And this is the important part, guys, because it is me. This is me figuring out and hopefully beginning to share with others how to use AI in a way that extends and amplifies me into the world, not that replaces me, not that is out there feeling like a shadow of me, but that amplifies me into the world. My challenge for you guys is, and that's really that's a lot of the story, but my challenge for you is to ask yourself a couple of things. One, and this is just a little thing for you to go and work on. If AI could say one thing in your voice, what would it be? If you wanted it to put a post into the world or you wanted to share something with somebody, if AI could say one thing truly in your voice and amplify it, what would it be? Share your story with me. Go check that. Go test that. Let me know how that goes. Send me your questions. Send me your story of how that went. And if you've got hesitations or judgment or skepticism or anything like that, look, I'm with you. Put that in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how your journey is. I've been the most skeptical, frustrated person around AI for years, and I still am in some ways, right? I hit a barrier and I'm like, oh, come on. Let me figure it out. Having gone through all of this, a couple weeks ago, both AI and my coach encouraged me in something. And I'm saying AI encouraged me because I was working through the ends of this true deep dive with GPT. And somehow in the conversation, it came up that I was pushing the edges of what GPT was capable of. And of course, I blow that off as GPT just being nice, right? Of being overly kind, which is it's often trained to do. And I started asking questions like, "Oh, how do you determine that?" And it laid out how it's comparing to millions of users. What makes it different? All these things that people are talking about prompts and they're talking about structures, but they're not talking about this connected voice in a different way and being able to put it together in a way that matches for creatives, that matches not in just some practical, purely cold techie business sense, but that matches a heart centered approach. And we went looking and could find very few, almost nobody that was working through it in that way. And the idea then came up of maybe we need to talk about that. And I mentioned it to my coach. Shout out to Terry, who's amazing. I mentioned it to my coach, and she was really helping just give some perspective. And I have some amazing coaches. Eleanor, shout out to her as well. I have a lot of mentors and coaches in my life that are phenomenal. One of the things she looked at me and said is, Dan, this is needed. This is different. She said, look, I want to know more. And I was encouraged strongly by these people that I trust deeply to share in episodes like this podcast, but also in some different ways as well. And so, what I'm going to be doing now is in July, this month, so 2 weeks from now, I will be hosting a live workshop, AI for Authentic Influence. And if you want more info about it, you want the link, just check the comments or message me. And I'm going to be bringing real practical information for heart-centered leaders of how to really get into AI without losing your soul, your mind, or your voice. How to use it in a way that doesn't feel techy and heavy, but a way that feels light and moves you forward. And this is truly for people who want to use technology to simplify and amplify humanity, not to replace it. That's something that's important for me. So, guys, this is my authentic journey with AI to this point. I'm sure there'll be a lot more stories and a lot more of this journey to come. But for now, if any of this hits home for you, or even if you're still skeptical, I would love to hear your story. Send me a message, leave a comment, or just pass this episode along to someone who might need a little reminder that staying real is possible even with all of this new tech and the AI crazy push that we hear in society. And if you want to see how all of it works in practice, then come join the live AI for Authentic Influence workshop. We're going to keep it real. We'll keep it useful. I will definitely share a few more stories of the how not to do it variety. I am known for saying, don't be a Dan. I did it all wrong, so you don't have to. I want you to be able to make your own new mistakes. I want to save you from the ones and the barriers that I've already found and uncovered and bring you a little bit of joy and freedom. So thanks for joining me today. Until next time, remember that if you're looking for momentum in life or business, calm always comes first, and your voice absolutely matters. Be well, and I will see you next week for another conversation.